vehicle they were traveling in plunged into River Kiama overnight, and according to reports, the family was returning home from a dowry ceremony in Kiambu when the accident occurred along the Chomoka-Unyu Road. Witnesses said the driver, identified as Patrick Monene, lost control of the vehicle after it developed brake failure, causing it to veer off the road and into the river. Rescue teams arrived at the scene early Sunday morning and managed to retrieve the bodies of the 6 victims from the submerged vehicle. 6 other passengers survived the accident and are currently receiving treatment at Muranga Level 5 Hospital and Kirwara Level 4 Hospital.
Tukawa tukiwa nusu, hapo ndio tulikuta ndio gari ilipotea breki, nikaenda kushika ikakataa, nikaomba Mungu, nikaambia Mungu usikubali. Sasa kusema namna hiyo, wakaanza kupiga duru, wote wakapiga duru. Tukifika huko nisikia pa, nikajisikia mimi nikiwa chini, nikiwa majini, kichwa ya gari kaingia kwa maji.
6 kati ya waliokuwa wameaga dunia, ikiwemo babangu mzazi, na kuna wengine wamepata majeraha.
Ipata sisi kwa hiyo hospitali ni wagonjwa 6. Tukawahudumia vizuri, walipigwa picha, wakafanywa investigations zenye zilikuwa zinahitajika, wakahudumiwa vizuri na wako sawa. Mmoja tu ndiye anaonekana ako na injuries serious na atalazwa hospitali.
Tunatoka Kiambu na tulikuwa tumekaribia kufika nyumbani. Dereva akasema gari imekosa breki na yeye akakosa kudhibiti ile gari. Ilikuwa masaa ya usiku, ile gari ikatutumbukiza kwa mto.
Imetuagusha sisi wote kwa mto. Familia mzima ya watu 13 walikuwa kwa hiyo gari. Watu wa serikali watuangalilie hiyo barabara, hiyo daraja ni mbaya. Ni haina mabati ya kando na kando, kwa hivyo inaweza kosa ajali mingi sana.
And shifting to education matters, Education Cabinet Secretary Julius Ogamba has issued a stern warning to individuals planning to engage in examination malpractices as the 2025 national exams approach. Speaking in Kitutu Chache, North Kisii County, during a funds drive at Nyasengenda SDA Church, Ogamba said the government has put in place strict measures to ensure the integrity of the examinations, which will see a total of 3.4 million candidates sit for their papers in this year. The CS assured the public that preparations across all schools have been finalized to facilitate a smooth and credible examination process. He further urged parents to avoid exerting unnecessary pressures on learners, emphasizing that students should be allowed to achieve grades that reflect their true academic abilities. And Ogamba added that the government has developed plans to ensure all candidates, regardless of their performance, are absorbed into various post-secondary institutions.
Watoto wetu wameanza kufanya mtihani wa 2025. Watoto wote wale wanafanya mtihani Kenya hii, kutoka primary, kutoka junior school, kuingia form 4, wote ni 3.4. There are 3.4 million children doing exams in Kenya this year. Nataka kuomba watu wote, wakiwa ndani yao, watoto, walimu, wazazi, na watu wote ambao wanahusika katika ile maneno ya exams, tafadhali msikubali kufanya maneno ya malpractice kwa exam hii ya 2025. Msikubali kufanya maneno ya illegality yoyote ama irregularity yoyote katika kufanya exams ya mwaka huu. Ningependa na naomba muache watoto wafanye exams kwa sababu they have been properly prepared, na ile grade mtoto atapata ndio yake.
Still matters concerning departed former Prime Minister Raila Odinga still moving on, and this is to clearly indicate that Raila has left a very great impact on this nation and internationally, because from 15th up to date we're still talking of the same person, and this is to mean as you exit this world there is something that you have to live, and you have to leave people celebrating you and having an impact of the things that you've been seeing and reflecting on the things that you did by yourself, showing that there is a kind of a development through whichever side, and maybe when it comes to devolution that Raila, and maybe freedom for speech that Raila himself had championed for. And now, again, a special Sunday service was held at the home of the late former Prime Minister Raila Odinga in Bondo to honor his memory. The service, led by Anglican Bishop of the Bondo Diocese, Right Reverend David Kodia, was attended by family members, neighbors, church congregants, and friends of the Odinga family. In his sermon, Bishop Kodia emphasized the importance of unity and love within the community, urging Kenyans to uphold peace and togetherness in memory of the late statesman. And after the service, local supporters of English Premier League club Arsenal, of which Raila Odinga was a devoted fan and long-time member, visited the Odinga family to offer their condolences. Led by Silas Odhiambo, the fans donned Arsenal jerseys as they gathered at Odinga's gravesite, where they held prayers before meeting Mama Ida Odinga and Raila Jr. And as a gesture of respect and remembrance, they presented the family with an Arsenal jersey bearing the number 80, symbolizing the age Raila Odinga had attained before his passing. And in Nairobi, residents of Njiru in Nairobi County have paid tribute to the late former Prime Minister Raila Odinga by naming a local road in his honor. Speaking to the media, the residents described Raila as a national hero who dedicated his life to the fight for democracy, justice, and equality in Kenya. They said the decision to name the road after him was a symbol of appreciation for his immense contribution to the country's political and social transformation. The residents further noted that Raila's legacy will continue to inspire generations, urging leaders and citizens alike to emulate his courage, resilience, and patriotism.
Sisi siku ya leo pamoja na wakaaji na ofisi wa Njiru tumesema tukumbuke baba, ama tumesema tuweke jina ya jina ya Raila Odinga Road hapa Kamatuto tukimkumbuka, na mahali popote ambao huku Kenya ama huku nchini habari hii Wakenya wakiangalia na wakiona, ninataka kufikishia hii habari gavana wetu Sakaja na pamoja na rais wetu His Excellency William Ruto waweze kuona ya kwamba kuna jina ambaye imewekwa hapa Njiru ambaye inajiita Raila Amolo Odinga Road, na wakaaji kwa sababu ya heshima ya huyo kiongozi bila ubaguzi na vile alikuwa anashikilia wananchi, hawa wananchi wamejitokeza siku ya leo waweze kushuhudia jina yake ikiwekwa kwa hii jina ya hii barabara.
Na leo ni siku ya furaha. Tumekuwa na huzuni wiki moja iliyopita, na leo tumeweka huzuni kidogo na tuko na furaha leo. Ndimefanya tukakuja tuweke hii nini ya barabara, hii barabara iitwe jina ya Raila Amolo Odinga, ndio tuikwe tunakumbuka nao baba juu ametuacha, hatukuwa tunapenda ama tulikuwa tunafikiria atuache. Sasa tukaweka hii barabara iitwe kwa jina yake, juu alikuwa shujaa yule amepigania hii nchi yetu Kenya kwa nguvu zake zote. Ndio tumkumbushe miaka mingi sana, tukasema hii barabara iitwe kwa jina yake. Ndio saa zote tukipita kwa hii barabara, tukiingia kwa hii estate ya Kamatuto, Kila mtu anajua hii barabara ni ya Raila Amolo Odinga.
Raila Amolo Odinga. Na ndio tumetoka nje kama wakaji wote, kwa sababu upande huu wa Njiru kulikuwa na mambo imetendeka makubwa. Raila Amolo Odinga hata wakati aliungana na rais wa zamani Daniel Toroitich arap Moi, yeye ndiye alishikana na viongozi wengine, tukawa na Obama Estate. Obama Estate ilisettle all the squatters, wale ambao hawakukuwa na mali ya kuishi paka kule Dandora, watu wakakuwa settle hapa. Na mnajua vile vile hata wakati wa Jared Ochok, Raila alipigania masquatters, na wakati sisi tulikuwa tunauliwa ama tunakuwa threatened na ile regime ambayo ilikuweko, Raila angetoka nje kutetea sisi. Na ndio imepata ya kwamba siku ya leo hii area yote imekuwa estate, na through that confidence Raila alitufanya.
The government has announced plans to destroy a massive consignment of narcotic drugs worth 8 million Kenya shillings that was intercepted on the Indian Ocean coastline on Sunday. According to Interior Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen, 6 Iranian nationals have been arrested in connection with the drug. Preliminary investigations revealed the vessel used to transport the shipment originated from Iran, with the suspect reportedly provided with a navigational map to facilitate the illegal transit. Murkomen affirmed the government's commitment to intensifying the war against drug trafficking, saying the crackdown into international cartels will continue without compromise. He also warned that those found aiding or abetting the trade will face the full force of the law. Authorities have confirmed that the seized narcotics will be destroyed in line with international anti-narcotics protocols once investigations are concluded.
Na unaona hao wanapelekwa kotini, na hivi karibuni utaona tukidestroy those madawa ya kulevya publicly, because we have resolved as a nation that we must fight drugs, we must fight illicit alcohol, we must fight all kind of vices that are destroying the lives of our people.
The vessel you see behind us has been under the radar of the international community, being suspected of carrying out illicit, particularly narcotics activities within the Western Indian Ocean.
ODM Deputy Party Leader and Kisii Governor Simba Arati has extended an olive branch to President William Ruto, urging him to rejoin the Orange Democratic Movement (ODM) as he has a second stab at the presidency. Speaking during a meet and greet tour in Kisumu, Arati reminisced about the 2007 Pentagon coalition that united key political figures under ODM, saying the party remains the strongest vehicle to form the next government. He symbolically dangled the orange to President Ruto, calling on him to return to the movement that once shaped his political journey. Arati also rallied ODM grassroots supporters to remain loyal and optimistic, assuring them that the party will regain its strength and direction following the death of its longtime leader, Raila Odinga.
Tumesema kwamba sasa tumeanza celebration za maisha ya baba aliyoishi hapa duniani. Tumesema kwamba baba aende salama, na chama cha ODM kitasimama imara. Eti kuna watu watauza chama, hakuna. Mimi kama deputy party leader tumeambia William Ruto, Mheshimiwa William Ruto, tumemwambia yeye alikuwa katika chama cha ODM. Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta, hata Kalonzo walikuwa ODM. Tunawaambia kumpea heshima baba, wao wakuje kutoka pale, tujiunge pamoja katika ODM, tupeane katika 2027. Chama cha ODM lazima kishinde kura 2027 ndiposa baba atubariki tukiendelea mbele.
Kenya Kwanza leaders have come out strongly to defend the recently enacted social media regulation law signed by President William Ruto, saying critics are misleading the public about its Indent. Speaking during a public rally in Isanjiro, Malaba constituency, National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetangula and Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah dismissed claims that the law seeks to silence government critics. Instead, they maintained that the legislation is aimed at promoting discipline, accountability, and responsible use of social media platforms. The leaders emphasized that freedom of expression must go hand in hand with responsibility, noting the increasing spread of misinformation and online abuse has become a national concern. They urged Kenyans to support the law, saying it will help foster more respectful and truthful digital space.
Itakuwa aibu kubwa kuona ya kwamba katika mitandao ya kijamii watoto wanaonyesha watu wakiwa uchi, watu wakifanya mambo machafu, watu wakivuta bangi, watu wakifanya mambo mabaya, na wale ambao wanazungumza maneno haieleweki.
Ni kukinga kanisa dhidi ya dini potovu ama cultic behavior and religious extremism. Lengo la pili na muhimu sana, padri, lilikuwa ni lengo la kulinda familia zetu kutokana na mambo potovu ya ngono na maonyesho ya ngono kwa mitandao.
Mnaposhika mkono William Ruto aende tamu ya pili kama jirani, tunaomba na nyinyi mtafute majirani akiwemo Ichung'wah ili uongozi uje magharibi. Na uongozi haiwezi kuja magharibi, uongozi itatokea hapa Malava, ikuja hapa Western, ndio Wetangula na viongozi wa hapa wakalie kiti ya...
And still on ODM, debate continues to intensify within the Orange Democratic Movement ODM, or whether the party should field a presidential candidate in the 2027 general elections or support President William Ruto's re-election bid. Alego Usonga, Member of Parliament and National Assembly Budget Committee Chairperson Samuel Atandi, has openly stated that ODM currently lacks the capacity to mount a serious presidential campaign. He urged party members to rally behind President Ruto, urging that the late party leader Raila Odinga did not adequately prepare his supporters to contest for the presidency after his tenure. And according to internal party sources, there are growing indications that ODM could align itself with President Ruto's administration ahead of the 2027 polls, marking a possible shift in Kenya's political alliances.
There is nobody in ODM who can run for president as at now, because Raila Odinga did not prepare anyone to run for president. If there's a leader there who thinks he can run for president, come out and also tell us whether you have capacity to defeat President William Ruto. ODM is not ready to run for presidential candidate in 2027. The party is not prepared to field a candidate, and that is why we are saying that William Ruto is a former member of ODM. We have gone back to our former members to help us rejuvenate ODM.
That story from ODM gives us a short break. We're coming back with the newspaper review.
And we want to understand what is making headlines on the newspapers this morning and why it matters that we have to talk about this. So allow me to kick it off with the Daily Nation. Now, top of the page, abductions, UN demands answers. Abductions, UN demands answers. Now, in extrajudicial killings, the UN official has condemned disproportionate use of force by police against protesters to crush dissent. Now, the Kenyan government has snapped 2 letters from a United Nations official raising concerns about police killings, abductions, and forced disappearances, detention and prosecution of government critics following protests in 2024 and this year. By ignoring the communication from Ms. Mary Lawlor, the Special Rapporteur on Situation of Human Rights Defenders, Kenya's case will be referred to the Human Rights Council, an organ of the United Nations General Assembly. Now, perhaps a quick backstory on just how we got to this point where Kenya is risking sanctions for ignoring UN queries on human rights abuses. Now, with the Gen Z uprising in June of 2024, which led to the subsequent invasion in parliament, we saw hundreds of Kenyans injured, and we also saw more than 60 people dead. This is according to human rights organizations here within the country. And so it put Kenya on such a terrible spot because we've seen protests across countries like US, countries like France, but the level of human rights invasion that we saw is quite disproportionate if you really look at just this particular kind of uprising and unrests. And so if you're having more than 60 people dead and you're having enforced disappearances, you tweet something in the morning, later on in the afternoon somebody's picking you up. If you're having arrests, massive arrests being made, injuries as well that are being recorded. So, it's not just about what happens locally, it's also about the eyes that are on this particular country, especially foreign eyes. And so Kenya is risking sanctions for ignoring UN queries. As you know, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Situation of Human Rights had written 2 letters to Kenya to address the raising concerns about extrajudicial killings and police killings, abductions and forced disappearances, but they're yet to receive any answers. So, this follows frustrations expressed by Mary Laura, the UN Special Rapporteur, regarding the government's failure to respond to her 2 letters on abductions, on persecution and enforced disappearances of government critics. Now, going public about the frustrations on her X handle, Laura noted that on October 1st, 2024, she wrote to the government of Kenya seeking answers on the arbitrary arrest, the detention, deportation, and prosecution of human rights defenders. Now, of interest to the Special Rapporteur, allegations of abductions, including protesters, activists, lawyers, medical professionals, and human rights defenders, in relation to the June, July, and August 2024 protests calling for rejection of the Finance Bill 2024 and accountability from the government. So, Kenya has not really been able to respond to that. And perhaps this also reflects on the frustration also locally when you're having Kenyans going out on the streets, corridors of court, to just seek answers and to seek compensation, accountability from the government, but none comes about. And so, it just reflects that how the government behaves locally is also what they're doing to foreign forces or to even international organizations that are looking to ensure that as much as this is a duly elected government, that whatever they are doing in office is bounded by human rights, freedoms, and expressions. And that is the story on top of the page, abductions, UN demands answers. Now, in the education sector, it's a critical week today and from today as the CBC exams are underway. The Kenya Junior Secondary School Education Assessment, as well as the Kenya Primary School Education Assessment, that is KPSEA and KGSEA. Now, over 2 million candidates will today sit those 2 particular examinations ahead of transition to senior school. And I remember last week I spoke about this a little bit more, where we are having grade 6 learners and those in grade 9 sitting the examination. Now, those who are leaving grade 9 will be entering grade 10, 11, and 12. And this will be domiciled in senior schools rather than being domiciled in primary schools. what we are having is that the grade 6 will be transitioning to grade 7 and 8, which are transitioned in primary schools, what are now being called comprehensive schools, right? Then you've got the grade 9, who will be transitioning to senior schools, which are previously high school. So, for example, if you've got, this is just an example, you have St. Joseph's Girls High School will now be transitioned to St. Joseph's Girls Senior School. And so this is where now students can pick what courses they want to pursue. Is it a STEM course, science, technology, and mathematics course? Is it a arts and social science, arts and sports course? Or is it a social science units or subjects, for lack of a better word? Now, depending on how the school has been categorized, or you've got the levels in terms of just how they have been categorized or clustered. So not all schools will be able to offer the STEM courses, the arts and sports courses, or the social sciences courses. Some may offer just the STEM, some may offer just the social sciences, some may offer just the arts and sports, depending also on the capacity of the school to do so. Now, previously, this was similar in terms of like national schools. You had county schools, or actually extra county schools, you had county schools, and then you had the sub-county schools. And so you find that the level of infrastructure development, capacity building in national schools is quite different from what is in sub-county schools. And so the only difference now comes in place that not all courses will be offered in the list, schools which have been clustered from, from a higher level to a lower level, just trying to get the right terminology for it. And so there's the learners, get into these particular examinations. They're preparing for a very important transition, where grade 6 learners will undertake the Kenya Primary School Education Assessment, marking the end of primary school studies, while in grade 9, the learners in the class will transition from junior school to the senior schools in January of 2026. So that is the JSS junior secondary schools are now transitioning to senior secondary schools, which I believe should be now SSS. And so, it's a critical point in the country's education system as we are slowly phasing out the 844 system. The last batch of the 844 kids will be getting into Form 3 in 2026. So eventually, let's say by 2028, yes, there will no longer be a Form 1, 2, 3 sort of system. What you'll be having is, you're getting into grade 10, grade 11, grade 12, and then eventually we can now talk about a further process from that. So it's a very momentous time in the country this morning as candidates face assessment as Kenya's largest exam year starts. 2 batches, and so you've probably come across them on their way to schools this morning. So we wish them all the best as they sit for their examinations. Now, elsewhere, Raila party in crisis meeting as Oburu takes charge. Siaya Senator Oburu Oginga, who was recently installed as the interim ODM party leader following the death of his brother, Raila Odinga, has convened a meeting of the party's top decision-making organ today in the face of growing internal fights. Now, this all boils to which direction should the party take. So, ODM top organ to meet as wrangles rock party. Now, during the Central Management Committee, Dr. Oburu is expected to officially take over the party leadership following the death of his younger brother. The long-serving ODM leader and former Prime Minister died in India on October 15th. Dr. Oburu, who has largely played low-key politics, is stepping in to run the 20-year-old party when it is facing major internal wrangles that threaten to water down its influence ahead of the 2027 polls. ODM SG Edwin Sifuna has continued to publicly oppose suggestions that the party will support Ruto's re-election bid, while conservatives, where Oburu appears to belong, have remained supportive of the broad-based arrangement within the Kenya Kwanza administration. Now, before Raila died, members opposed to the broad-based arranged had threatened a walkout of the party should it resolve to back Dr. Ruto's re-election. Although Raila led ODM into the broad-based arrangement, he was protective of critics of the deal, even when other top officials demanded that they be kicked out. Now, this is a conversation we also had last week. I believe it was also the Daily Nation that, headlined what did Raila exactly say. And this was just weeks before he had died, where he questioned some of the members who had said they will support Ruto, that who told them that ODM is not going to field a candidate. And so it's a question on, is this particular union between ODM and UDA just a union until 2027, and then within that period they can be able to get their own presidential candidate in the polls? Or is this a union that goes to 2027 and even past 2027? Will ODM be in government 2027, or will they be the government? The latter talks about them fronting their own presidential candidate and hoping that they're elected to that particular position of the top seat in the government. Being in government is, we're not necessarily fronting our own candidate, but we're going to support the party that is going to get the backing of the people, hopefully, if they're elected. Now, in a previous media, interview, in a local TV interview, Edwin Sifuna stated that, his biggest concern is that if they continue with this arrangement, then they won't have enough time to be able to kick the campaigns in and sort of revitalize their party, and whoever will be flying that flag. But also look at it this way: who exactly can challenge President William Ruto from ODM party at this point in time? Raila Odinga did that job gladly over the years, challenging the incumbents, looking at just the number of voters he was amassing. But as we speak right now, if we were to head into a poll in the next few months, who within ODM will be able to battle it out with William Ruto at the poll, and not just battling it out, but also, being such a key challenger and a key opponent that, you risk a runoff through an election, as it has been over the years. So there are so many aspects to this. And those, who are saying they're going to support the candidate perhaps have the argument that, they risk losing out on key positions if they decide to go their own route, just as ODM. Or those who are opposing this also argue that, this is not the agreement. This is such an unpopular government, perhaps from their point of view. And so supporting them automatically makes them stand in the wrong side of history. So we'll be looking to see how that particular meeting turns out. But I can guarantee you that there are key members of the ODM party who will be under fire a lot from other members: SG Edwin Sifuna, Babu Owino, Caleb Amisi. These are the three main leaders within the ODM party who have expressed their, thoughts, their views, their tone concerning the government of the day. And perhaps there are also many of them, just like them, within the party, but they have not voiced it out. They now speak on the other side of the mouth. You have got Gladys Wanga, the chairperson of the party. You have deputy parties like Abdul Samad Sharif Nasir, the Mombasa governor, Osotsi, who's the governor, who's the senator for Vihiga County, that is Godfrey Osotsi. Talk about Deputy Party Leader Simba Arati, the governor for Kisii County. These are leaders who, have outrightly said, they're in this particular union or pact till the end. So we'll be looking forward to see how this goes. However, the spokesperson says that this is not a crisis meeting. It will be a crisis if ODM could not bring itself to meet after the departure of ODM. So it perhaps will provide a way forward on exactly what this means for the party. Also, tragedy has unfolded where a couple's son killed in accident after dowry ceremony in Kiambu. A couple and their son, were among 6 people who died on Saturday night when the vehicle plunged into a river in Murang'a County. And I believe we have that story this morning where, you're out to celebrate such a wonderful event, and then you on your way back home, there's brake failure on your vehicle, and you're just a few meters away from home, and this happened. So according to police, the accident claimed the lives of 3 brothers, the wife of one of them, their son, and an unidentified woman. Murang'a County Commissioner Charles Murithi said the 6 were returning from the dowry ceremony in Kiambu when the 14-seater matatu they were traveling in veered off the road and plunged into River Kiama in Gatanga constituency. Can we listen into that to just get the first-hand accounts of some of the survivors of that particular tragedy in Murang'a County when they were coming off from a dowry ceremony in Kiambu? Let's listen into that.
Tukawa tukiwa nusu, hapo ndio tulikuta ndio gari ilipotea breki, nikaenda kushika ikakataa, nikaomba Mungu, nikaambia Mungu usikubali. Sasa kusema namna hiyo wakaanza kupiga duru, wote wakapiga duru. Tukifika huko nisikia pa, nikajisikia mimi nikiwa chini, nikiwa majini, kichwa ya gari kaingia kwa maji.
6 kati ya waliokuwa wameaga dunia, ikiwemo babangu mzazi, na kuna wengine wamepata majeraha.
Ipata sisi kwa hiyo hospitali ni wagonjwa 6. Tukawahudumia vizuri, walipigwa picha, wakafanywa investigations zenye zilikuwa zinahitajika, wakahudumiwa vizuri na wako sawa. Mmoja tu ndiye anaonekana ako na injuries serious na atalazwa hospitali.
Tunatoka Kiambu na tulikuwa tumekaribia kufika nyumbani. Dereva akasema gari imekosa breki na yeye akakosa kudhibiti ile gari. Ilikuwa masaa ya usiku, ile gari ikatutumbukiza kwa mto.
Imetuagusha sisi wote kwa mto. Familia mzima ya watu 13 walikuwa kwa hiyo gari. Watu wa serikali watuangalilie hiyo barabara, hiyo daraja ni mbaya. Juu haina mabati ya kando na kando, kwa hivyo inaweza kosa ajali mingi sana.
All right, we condole with the family, and it's such a tragic event, and we sympathize and empathize with them. Now let's switch to the Standard newspaper this morning that reveals shocking details that one can only see this in the movies, but is actually happening. Trapped in Russia. That is the headline on the Standard newspaper this morning. Russia's war on Ukraine is now affecting Kenyans directly with severe consequences as it emerges that hundreds of the country's youths have been trapped and forced to fight on Russia's front lines, with dozens killed and many more nursing life injuries in military hospitals. Most were promised well-paying jobs but were coerced into the army upon arrival. Today we released the identities of 5 young men who traveled to Russia between July and August, whose whereabouts are unknown back home but are said to be on the front lines. On top of the page, we've got the 5, Orima Jobik Otieno, a 24-year-old, and their whereabouts are unknown at the moment. Ismail Tariq Ahmed, a 25-year-old, Kariuki Samuel Maina, a 31-year-old, Kuloba David Shikanda, a 22-year-old, and Wangari Ruben Ndungu, a 29-year-old. So it is such a shocking revelation. And one of the gentlemen whose identity has been hidden by the Standard newspaper this morning talks about just how they found themselves in this position. With an employment crisis in the country, many are looking to go overseas to get employment. And so for this particular case, for example, his name is Javan. The false name is Javan. And he was promised jobs overseas in Qatar, but it got to a point as he was engaging with one of the recruitment agencies, he was told that there's a job in Russia where you'll be working in shops, in shopping stores, in factories, and in hotels in Russia. So, he opted to go the Russia way. And so he met one man called Gilbert of an agency called Global Space, which was located right here in Nairobi at Chai House. Now, this particular individual recruited 6 men from among several applicants, collected their passports, and asked them to proceed to a nearby clinic for medical tests. Now, the agency paid all fees, the visa, medical tests, and flights to St. Petersburg in Russia. Their visas were ready on July 6th, and as they waited for their tickets, Gilbert's team told them they needed to pay 30,000 each, claiming it was the fee for immigration services. They were directed to a specific immigration officer at the airport on the day of their travel. Now, their instincts came alive when moments the plane landed in St. Petersburg, that is in Russia. A man who couldn't express himself properly in English demanded for their passports, their return tickets, and their phones. He then escorted them to a bank where accounts were registered in their names. Much later, they realized that they had signed conscription into the Russian army to fight against Ukraine. Now, this document they were signing was in Russian, so they couldn't understand Russian. But later on, they realized that they had signed conscription, letters into the Russian army to fight against Ukraine. Now, we also found out that he had placed a standing order on the bank account that he had opened, and that any money paid into that account will be taken by the agency that shipped them to Russia. After signing the documents at the bank, they were driven for 3 hours into a forested area in an abandoned house to spend the night, and the following day they returned to St. Petersburg and were introduced to a military unit. And so that is how they found themselves at a military camp in Russia, in the guise that you're going out to work in a factory, in a hotel, in a shopping mall. So according to this individual, from his account, all the money that was paid into the account that he opened was withdrawn by the agency in Nairobi. How much are we talking about? Now get this. It's at 210,000 shillings, which was for the salary of August. 800,000 shillings for bonus for service, and 3.2 million shillings, which was compensation for his injured arm on the front line. So in total, we're looking at about, from my calculations, should be about 4.2 million shillings that this agency withdrew in a span of 2 months. Now the gentleman is back home because he suffered brutally at the front line within the Russian army, and so he is back home. And this is just one case where he's back home injured, and now we have cases of those that are out missing. And so that is the details that have been revealed this morning on the Standard newspaper, harrowing tales of Kenyan men forcefully enlisted into the Russian army without their knowledge. At the same point, also how Kenyans became direct victims of Russian war in Ukraine. Now, this particular recruitment agencies, you may ask, are under investigation by DCI following arrest on September 26th in Athi River, where they raided Great Wall apartments where 21 Kenyans were found being processed for travel to Russia. The agencies operate under the guise of offering employment opportunities in Russia and other countries, but their victims end up in the hands of Russian military recruiters soon after arriving in St. Petersburg. So, I mean, it's such a shocking revelation. One can only describe it as, and there's so many things that running through my mind, and just how can we describe this for you to get a very clear picture of just what this means. It's criminality of the highest order. If you promise somebody an employment to let's say a hotel in Russia, and then they get to Russia, and the things change very quickly. They are signing conscription details. They are signing military documents. They are signing unawares of what they are signing because they don't understand Russian. And so it is such a shocking, and we can only hope that the DCI officers, the government, will really work hard to get to the bottom of this so that we avoid this scenario. Because as we speak, at least 5 men are missing. Their whereabouts are unknown in Russia, fighting a war. They have no idea what exactly they are fighting for, It's Russia versus Ukraine. As a Kenyan, what exactly will you be fighting for? You're fighting a war that does not involve you. You're fighting a war that, you're not inflicted as a Kenyan. And so it is just shocking to say the least. So that is the headline on the Standard newspaper this morning. Also, major milestone as learners sit KJCI and grade 9 examinations. I believe I've tackled that very much this morning on the CBE, CBC examinations with the transition to grade 10 as well as the transition to grade 7. So that is the headline and some of the stories making headlines on the Standard newspaper this morning. Also, an eye on our neighbors, Tanzania, whose October 29th elections are nearing, I believe 2 days to go. Unstoppable Samia eyes easy win amid opposition repression claims. And so that is the headline on top of the page. Now in 2021, she assumed office after the death of the incumbent President John Pombe Magufuli. And so she is now vying for presidency herself amidst claims of opposition repressions, abductions, and arrests as well of key opposition figures, including Tundu Lissu. And so, harrowing details have come from Tanzania, some of which, we cannot independently verify as EBN TV. But some have, claimed that Tanzania is witnessing a worsening human rights situation as authorities increasingly rely on repressive laws to suppress dissent, targeting journalists, targeting civil society organizations, and targeting human rights defenders. The government has dismissed the accusations, describing them as sweeping, unsubstantiated, and inconsistent with Tanzania's governance and human rights framework. Chief Government Spokesperson Gerson Msigwa expressed concern over the report, saying it had been released without giving the authorities a fair opportunity to respond. So our eyes will be in Tanzania to just see what exactly happens. But, according to at least some of the polls, well, the president, incumbent Samia Suluhu, is unstoppable, and she's likely to win the October 29th polls. All right, so those are the headlines on the local dailies this morning. That is on the Standard and on the Daily Nation. We hope you're duly informed. Thank you for watching Morning Live. Allow me to wrap it up at this point. It's actually 8 a.m. Have yourself a wonderful morning ahead.